Okay, we are so excited to see everybody. I'm Amber Jewell, and I am the board president of Successful Survivors Foundation, of which I have the blessing to be connected through Miss Rhonda, who's always here with us, guides us. She's going to be chiming in. And so we're excited about today. Even if it's a small group that's here, we hope that everybody shares this information in your communities, in your groups. I know this is a busy time of year, but share it to people about what this is, because as you'll learn, as we ask Charles to talk about his service and what he does, it's really impactful, and it does some great things in the heart of communities and kids that we all talk about. So just a reminder for those of you who don't know that Love is Action is the foundation of believing in change in our lives and at the lives of within our influence. And within our influence can be different for each of us, but in our communities. And we do this through friendship, and we do this through kindness. And so he's going to share with us today a little bit about that. But first of all, Mr. Stephen Dudley, could you open us in prayer today and just bless the message we're going to have?
Okay, sure thing. Let me say this too, just we have a little announcement. I'm invited to have an interview for the book I wrote on TCT Christians Television on September 9th at 2:30 in the afternoon. So just to let you all know.
Thank you.
Father, we come in the name of Jesus. We thank you, Lord, for our time together. Lord, we pray that you'll bless our time, give guidance to the speaker, Lord. We pray that you will give us open ears, open hearts to receive what you have for us, Lord, and help us to apply all that you want to our lives, Lord. And we give you thanks and praise in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. And we're excited for that. So I did share it on the side and correct it if it's wrong, please, Mr. Dudley. And so Charles, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a little bit of what you had so that we can get you started as a speaker and telling us about your service. But I do want everybody to know that this is posted as well, and follow up on what he has, and questions. Feel free to chime in with questions and thoughts. We would love that. As you don't know maybe what he has, he may not know what you have and how it relates. And so we'll allow time for conversation as well. So what Charles talks about is how life as a craft, and I think we're all pretty crafty people. And so I'm excited to hear how we can apply that to what we do in our Love is Action. And so in the information about his, we have that master craftspeople are those who have mastered their area of expertise. Life as a craft shows us how to apply the same framework to the things we care most about. It's a much more effective approach than the hit or miss results of living by trial and error. And as a foster alumni, kid who was in foster care, a foster parent, foster care worker, and Miss Rhonda, who speaks for the life of those in foster care, and all of you who are advocates for it, I think seeing something beyond living by trial and error is a great tool we all need. So we're excited for that. So, Mr. Charles, if you want to take it away and share with us what you have.
Good morning, Amber. Thank you. And good morning to everyone listening today. You know, we're here today due to Rhonda's constant curiosity and, as I say, unpacking things. I mean, she seems to really want to get to the heart of the matter. And we had a short conversation several months ago. And it just, flew by. And I think the big reason for that was the place that she and people like you come from. You're aware, you're present, you're active in your life, you're active in the life of others in the community. And you're looking to see that yourself and those around us are coming up to a place of development and self-care and self-balance in 1,000 different ways that we do that, across the world. And so the conversation that Rhonda and I had kind of led us to a conversation today with this active group of people, not just passive listeners, but people that actually go out and do something about it in your communities. And so I think she felt strongly about wanting to share this as another potential model, a tool for you that can be available to you as an alternate way of thinking or an alternate way of bringing something to those who you work with and those who you love. What I recall Rhonda mentioning to me during our conversation was how she works with so many people and talks about guiding them and bringing them to different places to achieve, a life purpose. And one of the things that struck me in our conversation was how she stopped and said, my goodness, this framework could be something that I can use and point people to help them continue in a structured way to pursue a life purpose all the days of their life. So that is effectively what brings us here today together. And as Amber had mentioned, a term that you're going to hear during this conversation is the idea of something called life as a craft, as compared to life as a random set of circumstances that just happen to us with no rhyme or reason, and or we can't see the connectivity between the dots, so to speak. Those in you in leadership positions probably do. You have frameworks that you've developed and constructed for life through your worldview, through your spiritual views and other types of things. But so many of the people that lives who you touch may not have those structures and those frameworks. And so this is an alternative structure and framework that's very simple to follow and understand, into which any level of content from any particular worldview can be placed and used. So it's not designed to change. It's like organizing your closet. All the stuff is still there, but it might be in new places and new structures. So life as a craft is the result of a 6-year-old child coming to her father in a kitchen one day and saying, "Hey, Dad, what's my life all about?" And I said, gosh, you're not supposed to be asking that question yet. But believe it or not, I've had podcast interviews where they've told me, oh, no, my 4-year-old came in and asked me that question. I said, oh, okay, so I'm a little late to the game then. But in any event, that started a journey. And Rhonda and I talked about the journey that afternoon several months ago. And what it did was, like for, any dad or mom or caregiver, it opened a door, that said, I've got to answer that question, and I need to answer it well. And there's a lot of different ways I could answer it, about God's plan, or about a way of doing things, or a way of conducting oneself. There's so many different ways, but what about the certain, what I'll call the practicalities of the everyday? You're getting out of bed, putting your feet onto the floor, and going down to the kitchen to start breakfast in the day. Is there a practical concept or structure that is something that I could say to my daughter, here is what the day-to-day of life is, above and beyond the guidance that you might receive from your inner spirit? And so that started a 2-year journey. And at the end of that 2 years, what I had done was investigated probably about 400 or 500 life topics, the kinds of things that we all think about every day, from car repair to, managing the house and, how we get along with our families. And it became kind of like a book, kind of like a reference manual. And the second thing that came out of that kind of in study and investigation was the idea that these reference guides or reference manuals are something that actually started several thousand years ago in the workshops of master craftsmen and craftswomen across the world, from Africa to India to Europe and South America. All of these places had this tradition of, at the center of the workshop, that the young apprentices and the young journeymen and journeywomen could go and reference this, kind of like we reference the Bible on a daily basis. But this was about topics of things that were being done in the workshop, how you keeping your workbench clean, and how you're like, that's your room, and so forth and so on. So this idea of this workshop manual started giving way to even another level of thinking, which was the idea of, wait a minute, if we're all learning a craft, or many of us learn multiple crafts, and we get better at it over time, and it's structured and it has progression and development, why couldn't we use that same model across everything else we do, not just our career or not just, let's say, homemaking, but that we could actually say anything you want to do with regard to your family matters and or your individual personal life is all about the idea of crafting. You're developing, you're shaping. You know, as far as I know, the great teacher was a carpenter, is what they tell us. So in that regard, we look at something in this way and say, if life was a craft, something to be learned and progressively improved upon, and here is the simple structure, the curriculum for that craft, what spirit you bring to it is your own personal journey, but the end result is still works of great quality. What are you putting before the world? And how are you bringing yourself to the world? So the end result in that introduction is that the idea of life as a craft actually comes from the traditions around the world that have been practiced for thousands of years. And it is something that we still practice today in our schools and our trade schools and our universities and colleges. We have the structure. We enter as apprentices and we move through into the world, into our journey work. And over time, we become masters. And then eventually many of us become mentors. Those same phases in life is the journey that is set before us, such that people like me talking to you today, I'm in my mentorship phase, 65 years and beyond. And now in this phase in my life, I'm bringing this message back to the next generation. So that's what the idea here basically is that there's a framework, there's a structure, and we can talk about the components and the elements. And it gives people a vision toward a future that says, well, wait a minute, I know that God's plan is there part of what I'm doing and why I'm here. But aren't we searching for God's plan? And aren't we working along the way as we look for that? So when our work is of high quality, we not only have great self-esteem, but it's something that's given back to the world that helps others. So that's the opening, Amber.
Oh, Charles, I love that, because for everybody who's here, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about this. And so as I'm hearing it, I'm just thinking, and I work at a school, K-12, and I specifically work with at-risk or foster kids. And I just think, man, if we had given them some of this skill and this belief that there is a purpose or a craft that they hold, and really putting it in words they can comprehend and explore, how much of a difference that really makes, and how many of them miss it without having people like those who are right here to come in and teach them these skills. That's so important.
I mean, that you sound exactly like Rhonda in our last conversation. I mean, that's exactly the approach she got. So, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because so then here's just some thoughts for the audience today. So we'll talk more about the structure of the craft, but when you talk about the young children, here's a little exercise, and maybe you'll try this out, Amber. So you say to kids, so what I want everybody to think about for a moment is, I want you to bring into your mind a masterpiece. And I want to stop for a moment and have everyone think about, what is a masterpiece? I want you to think about a painting or a movie or a great dish that was prepared by a chef, or an amazing performance by an Olympic athlete, or the way something that a doctor did a surgery that was just extraordinary. And I want you to think for a moment, what did you feel like when you saw someone do something with incredible skill? Now, most people will come back, including children, saying, oh, I want to be that. I want to do that as well as they did. That inspires me, right? And many times it's when we come into contact with a masterpiece of some sort, that becomes the inspirational moment that triggers for many of us onto a path of something that we would like to do, something we would like to explore. Now, the minute that they get that anchored in their mind and it kind of energizes them, we then take them in and say, let's explore what it took to make that masterpiece. And what we find are basic principles. It required commitment to want to do it. because it won't get done without the commitment. Secondly, it requires observation, which means the discipline of focus. So we learn focus. We learn to pay attention and stay with it to see how it's being done by other masters, right? Then the third phase is we begin to try it out on our own under the guidance of the mentor. And we practice and we incrementally improve and we get a little bit better at it. And when we do something well, we look and say, how did that make you feel? Oh, I feel so strong. I feel so good about myself. I feel so proud. Good. Let's continue that and improve upon it and make it better. And finally, the final phase is I feel as though that I can now go out and start to do this on a more regular basis. Now, take that little journey of the masterpiece and how the masterpiece was made, and then ask the children the question, how would you like to make a masterpiece of your life?
Yeah.
How would you like your entire life to be a masterpiece that not only you glow over, but that others who will be inspired when they see the masterpiece, right? So this story is something that not only can be a young child can capture in their mind, but it can pull them forward into making the commitment to say, well, now is it, what do I have to learn for the rest of my life and improve upon to eventually, by the end of my days, leave behind a masterpiece that the next generation will pick up and build upon and learn from. And that will have been a life lived with extraordinary purpose. And if it was to deliver a message about God's plan back to the next generation, then you've done a very powerful thing.
I love that. And I love the encouragement that it shares in you laying out the steps that it is and saying, you know, in the communities that we're in, wherever these listeners are, that they can do something exactly like this, replicate it, or something that fits their community that can make a really significant impact to younger ages and creates the community comeback that we're desiring for later ages. And so my question to you, Charles, is could you explain to us a little bit of how this looks for a day? If there's a certain age group you start with, and kind of how the application of this goes.
I think that the age group, first of all, prior to age 14 or so, the application would be primarily the caregivers around that child who are looking and thinking and behaving in a particular way because they are the primary shapers, you know, the primary craftsmen and women who are shaping that young life in one particular direction or another. Now, we all know that children express their independence way before age 14. However, around age 14, if you think about what happens around the world for thousands of years, in almost every culture you can think of, there is something called the rite of passage from childhood to entering the society of adults. That is a beautiful time to introduce this idea of that individual becoming the craftsperson of their own life. And now, incrementally, over the next number of years, during what's called the apprenticeship period, gradually they will take full responsibility for the ownership of their own lives and being the craftsperson of their own lives as you transition from your primary caregivers to becoming that individual who, by law, is recognized as being responsible for their own existence, right? I mean, mom and dad aren't going to go to jail anymore for you. It's going to be you who goes to jail if something doesn't go well. So that is an age time when it makes a lot of sense, the apprenticeship period. And then life as a craft, apprenticeship in the craft of life is roughly age 14 to age 24, 25. It's the learning phase to apprehend, right? To learn. Apprenticeship, it's the learning phase. It's the formal learning phase. So I would say that is the time when a significant amount of impact by external caregivers and mentors is going to take hold in those young people's lives and give them a direction. After that, the journey work phase, age 25 to 45, when people are going out into the world to practice living life as a craft, they're much more self-directed at that time, and those are people usually that will come to places like Life Masterpiece Workshop, which is our online environment that we're just about finished with. And because they're going to be self-starters, they're going to be out making their own choices now. So I think that apprenticeship phase, to your question, is a critical time.
Yeah. And so let me see how I want to say this. If somebody was wanting to do this or experience this, do you have a specific story, or could you tell us how long you've been doing this and some of the feedback you've got of how, if somebody wanted to do something or get information about it? Could you tell us how that would work?
Yes. So what we basically did was the end result of all of this was not just a way of thinking and looking, but it is a way of doing. So it is three things. It is a way of thinking, it is a way of doing, and it is a way of working. And so in order to be able to have presented something like this out to the world, we had to produce a work to put before everyone so that they could use the structure of this and not just be listening to a lovely conversation here for 30 minutes. So the current work is lifemasterpiecejournal.com, right, Rhonda? That's right, lifemasterpiecejournal.com. That is the first place for people to go. That's the current place where they'll see the structure of the 5 elements of life as a craft, which is the curriculum. They'll see the structure of the 4 phases that someone passes through and can see themselves moving from apprentice to journeyman, journeywoman, to master, to mentor in their life. They'll learn about the way of craftsmanship and what that means, which is excellence of execution in all things that you do, right? And so that content and that structure is there so that you can actually follow it and take from it the understanding and the structure. So if you go down into the 5 elements, one of the 5 elements is called family and personal heritage. That's one of the 5 elements for crafting your life. Now you would say, well, what does that mean? Well, think about how a human being, which is an organic material like a small tree, begins sprouting in what kind of a forest? It's called a family. And it begins its growth period there. And how that family heritage affects that young growing little tree has a tremendous amount to do with what they're going to be working with when they become older as apprentices and move out into the world. Family stories, where things came from, why they believe certain things that they do, the external heritage in the world around them that they live in. Is it America or is it Senegal? These different places, this heritage is going to have a huge impact on the early growth of that tree. So by going back and learning and understanding our heritage, it also then brings to us to mind that what we leave to the next generation as inheritance, as legacy from heritage is what's going to begin building and shaping them as well. So that's just the first of 5 elements in the curriculum.
Yeah, that's a powerful element too. So I'm really glad you chose that one to kind of talk to us about, because, for me as a foster kid, I really struggled with accepting and beginning to process that family history that I think a lot of us get lost into adulthood and well into our workforce and haven't acknowledged that and seen where some of our skills and strengths are from. And I think that's also probably universal. It doesn't have to be somebody in foster care. It could just be trauma related. And so equipping them with those skills at an earlier age of recognizing who they are and what they want to change beyond that is a really powerful thing. And it sounds like a great straight tool specifically for that.
Yeah, and let's stay with that for a little while, because it's going to, in the next moment or two, going to change your whole idea of what the word heritage means. Yeah. So if you go to lifemasterpiecejournal.com and look into family heritage, element 1, what you're going to find is that there's at least a dozen different topics that fall under that umbrella called heritage. Now here, listen just for a moment if you're in there looking. Do you know a family that has a family song? I do. It's a family song. Rhonda, okay. I mean, it's a family song. Do you know a family that has a family symbol? Do you know a family that has family colors? Do you know a family that has a family tree and has learned maybe a little bit about it from their heritage? The point that I'm getting to here is that when you start going into these topical areas as individual topics, whether you came from a foster program and or other types of things, as you begin looking into this, what it begins happening, it's called family and personal heritage. That's the name of the element. So there are those things which we will bring in from the family or families that we will be members of all of our lives, from our early time through the rest of our lives. How many more families you have before you, Amber? Who knows? That you will become a member of families and communities, and you will draw from them bits and pieces of heritage. Now, the personal heritage of the world around you, the sacred spaces of the culture that you grew up in, the social norms and celebrations. Have you ever seen the celebration that they have in India, which is the celebration of colors, that they throw these colorful like powders at one another and just complete explosion? When you grow up in these cultures, these individual personal heritage things mark you and they come into your life. So by the time you get done looking at just this one first element, family heritage, and all the component parts that are in there, and you sit back and you say, my gosh, so much of that is already in me. And there is so much more to be added to me if we bring it to the attention of the people that we touch and our children and our families. It opens up a way of looking at yourself that you never explored before to that level. And all of a sudden now you're making up your own symbol of your life, your own song of your life, your own colors, your own identity. You are creating your masterpiece.
Let me jump in. I'm glad you said that, Charles, because there are so many of us. I'm just off the top. I think there are 3 or 4 of us on this meeting right now, and many, many more who will see this, who came from dysfunctional, to say the very least, childhoods. So I'm glad that you said that last part that you said, because I think it's important to say to people who can't look back and find all of that rich, beautiful heritage, I want to say, create your own.
Absolutely.
And we get to do that. And sometimes I think it's actually better for us who get to create it the way we want it to be for our children and for everybody within our influence. And we can do it at any time in our lives.
Absolutely.
If you're still breathing, you're still in the game and you can create it. And that's what I've done. And so I'm just not saying, oh, gee, that's an idea. No, I've done that. Probably not as elegantly and as you've done it, not in such an organized fashion. But I think, just over the years, creating tradition and having that family song, and it's such a fun thing. I can barely breathe right now with asthma, so I can't break into song. But it's kind of funny that at any Shortino family gathering, all anybody has to do is say, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, and everybody breaks out, everybody starts singing. And it's just a riot. I mean, it can be, I'm sorry, this is just going to be weird, but it could even be at the reception after a funeral. I mean, it's a celebration of life anyway, right? It's a beautiful thing to have those shared things. And so thank you. I didn't mean to go too far out in the weeds, but
No, but so let's take the audience up to the fourth phase of life now, where I am, and perhaps maybe others. Mentorship, age 65 to 85 and beyond. And in Life as a Craft, when you read about phase 4, mentorship, it puts before you an objective. It says, in this phase of your life, for the next 20 plus years, however they may be, one of your main principal focus is to gather up from your history, from your family writings, from the things you have learned, and to package them as an artifact and leave it as a legacy for the next generation. So before your time is through, Rhonda, in making a masterpiece of your life, the family song should be written down. The family colors should be described. The family symbol, whatever it may be, a coat of arms or the acorn from an oak that says, from small beginnings, we become great. Whatever they may be, make them artifacts, because craftsmanship is about producing an end quality result that others can improve their lives from just by using it and seeing it. And we all know it. We all, when we use something of high quality and we touch it, whatever it is, we love it. It inspires us. So don't forget, in your mentorship phase, Rhonda, whenever you get there, remember to leave those things behind for the next generation and leave them videos of it so that they can see you all doing it and say, I'm a Shortino through and through.
Oh, that's really good. And I'm looking in the comments here. We have a comment from one of our attendees. How do you let go of the past, even if it hurts you? And, you know, she mentioned coming from foster care. So how would you respond to, you know, somebody who, you know, the memories aren't good. The information they can glean from, you know, family isn't good.
In Life as a Craft, we will, you're hearing it for the first time, but we'll anchor ourselves back into the way of craftsmanship. So I'm going to answer every question from that point of view. So here's what would happen. In a master's workshop, if an apprentice or journey person, journeyman, journeywoman, were to present that question to the master would specifically say to them, do you need to repair that? Do you need to replace that? Or do you need to take that away from the work that you're doing, right? As you're working on your masterpiece, what is your choice and your decision? Now, if you come back and say to the master, I think I would like to take it away. It's something that I don't think is fitting for the creation and the fulfillment of my masterpiece going forward. Then the master would say, are you skilled yourself? Have you ever trained in the skills to do that on your own? Yes or no? If the answer is no, I've never trained specifically in the skills to take that away in a workmanlike manner, then the master's response would be, then seek the mentor, the master craftswoman or craftsman that knows that skill, which could be a behavioral skill, someone in the social services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because you never work on your masterpiece without being skilled with the tools that you are using at the time. And if you've not been trained, you seek out the guidance and learning from the master men and women that are trained with those tools. You never do it yourself. That's the first law of craftsmanship.
That is so good. And I wanted to bring somebody else into the conversation now. We happen to have a beautiful young woman who is the USA ambassador, Ms. 2021, Jamerica Haynes, and she happens to be a former foster kid. And so, Jamerica, I would love for you to introduce yourself and then maybe also I mean, you've heard some of this. Obviously, I've probably heard more, Charles, than anybody else has. So I don't want to put you on the spot about, how you could apply this. But you obviously, coming out of foster care, you have done some things that help you to overcome some hard times. So maybe you could just share a little bit of that with us.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Rhonda, and everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I'm Jamerica Haynes-Lewis, and I'm from the Northwest, Seattle, Washington. And, as I'm listening to everyone talk about life as a craft, the main piece I think about is identity. And I think that is something that young people and alumni from CARE struggle with. I know that I have struggled with that. And when we talk about the family of origin, right, it provides us that identity, especially when we're children, and especially as female children, right? It's been in recent history that women have been this independent financially and socially, but for millions of years, the children belong to the family. That was their world. And we still have a sense of that communal inside, that communal feeling of family within us. And so to go through foster care means to be apart from your family. And there's a loss there, right? The initial separation. And if that separation becomes much more long-term, you end up experiencing a loss of identity as well as memory of your family. I personally don't have any memories of my mother before age 12, and that's just from a series of lack of interacting with her and trauma, whatever may have you. But what did help me was, even though I didn't spend time with my family and my mother lost her rights and I didn't go back to live with any of my family members, I realized I'm on my own in a way. And that really forced me to look at who I am and what I could do individually. And in a way, I kind of became my own family. And I also started thinking about the own legacy that I was going to leave. Even though my family couldn't have, done better, I will do better, and that led to me putting myself through college, getting involved in pageantry and using my life experiences to advocate for other young people in foster care. But I realized I can't do it on my own forever, nor should I. And so I had that desire for family, right? Because we are communal beings as human beings, to be a part of a tribe. And that led to me meeting my husband and getting married. And now we're thinking about what our own family life to look like, including children and pets. But we also bring those experiences of family with us. And so I think what I guess helped me to be successful was looking to the future. I couldn't change the past. I had to look forward. Also, too, working through that grief. I think when our foster youth lose their family, it's a form of ambiguous grief. And because of the circumstances, people don't help our young people through that grief, because it is a loss of something, right? When you are experiencing grief. And oftentimes it's easier for us to process anger because it revolts us versus sadness tends to stop us. It tends to slow us down, but it gives us a chance to reflect. And I think that reflection period allowed me to go, okay, I may have lost these things, but I'm still here. I can do good with my life. I can have a happy life and I'm worthy of that. So that's the long and short of, how I've come to be.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Well, so Charles, to hear how Jamerica has done this, I'm curious to know, applying, life as a craft. I mean, as a going forward basis, what would be your thoughts to share with Jamerica as she now is thinking about starting her own family and learning and living that as a craft?
Yeah, that was great because I immediately went to element 2 of the 5 elements of life as a craft, which is family and household management. which is the journey that she's about to embark upon with her husband. So in Life as a Craft, it recognizes two simple principles. We are members of families, and we are individual craftsmen and craftswomen of our own lives. We have our individual time in life, and we have our connection to families. Whether that starts early in our lives or whether we're separated and it causes us the grief feelings that, you know, we're hearing about, or whether it happens later in our lives. The question is that journey is a dance. We are moving in and out of these things all through our entire life, the families that we belong to, the groups and communities we belong to, and us as the individuals. So to the point is, in the way of craftsmanship, the idea behind the fundamental principle is teaching someone from their earliest days, if possible, that your life is a continuum of which you are going to be progressively crafting your life as a masterpiece. And it is going to move through changes and phases. And you will always be the ultimate skilled craftsperson of your life that has the capability and the power from day one to continue to craft yourself as you move in your dance in and out of the families that you belong to and the personal world that is your life. Now, the next logical question is, okay, that's a lovely, wonderful idea, but show me what that structure looks like so that I can grab onto something and follow it the same way I learn my trade or craft and profession. And that's what those 5 elements are. So now element 2, family and personal household management, is when 2 individuals are coming together who may have very different historical family experiences to that moment, now join together to decide we are going to create a new heritage, a new family that is a blend and a combination of the experiences we've had up to this moment, but what we will create, to Jamarica's point, going forward, because that becomes the new heritage, isn't it? It's the new place where young children will grow. It's the place where they're going to learn whether or not the purpose of their life is to make a masterpiece of their life, or whether they won't be paid attention to at all, as has been the historical past of some of us. So the point is that when you have the curriculum set before you, when you see it, you realize, oh my gosh, I have a structure into which, to your point, Rhonda, earlier, no matter what life phase or stage you are in, you are always practicing life as a craft. You may have just never known it.
That's so good. I have 2 pages of notes, Charles. and responding to lots of great comments in the chat. So this is great. I want to make sure that we open up to questions. Amber, is that okay if we do that right now?
Yeah, I think it's great. We have about 10-15 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts, this would be a great time to get those started.
Okay, so let me see if I can ask everybody to unmute so everybody can speak if they want to. There we go. And we just had a new person just join. So yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done speaking, Rhonda? I didn't want to interrupt.
Yes. I was just going to say, who has a question? So good.
Earlier, someone asked about what do they do when they can't let go? I have a question for people who get stuck in their lives. You know, I've been talking to a couple of my lady friends, you know, who want to move forward in their life. And, you know, I give them advice, but there's no movement. It's like they're stuck. So just how do you support people, especially when you see things in them, but they don't see it yet? But how do you just, you know, be there with them while helping them to move forward?
Was that directed at the group, or am I being asked to respond? I'm not sure.
Well, Charles, I'm asking you since you're the one who's
okay.
leading the meeting. Yeah, my apologies.
Yeah. No. So the question you're asking, if I answer it in the way of craftsmanship, It specifically has to do with the skill set that is needed for that individual to be able to become unstuck. And like you said, there's no forward motion or forward movement. Let me take you back into the craftsman's workshop of 1,000 years ago. And in that workshop, a young apprentice might be at the bench and they're working, and all of a sudden they get stuck, they get stopped. There's something in the material that is stopping them. There's a knot or a groove or something that they just do this. And the master would approach and say, all right, you've stopped. There's no forward motion. There's no progress here. So let me ask you a question. First of all, is there something wrong with the material? Do you see a flaw or something in the material you're working with, meaning you, the human being, that's not responding in the way that you'd like to? No, the material seems fine. Oh, okay. Let's ask the next question. What processes are you using or not as you work on this material that possibly you're getting stuck on? Well, I'm not doing any processes really. I'm just stuck. Oh, I see. The third question would be, which tools are you using or not? And the reply could come back, well, gee, I haven't really started using any tools whatsoever. So the master says, so you're saying to me that there's nothing wrong with the material, that the processes you're applying, you're not really doing much of anything, and the tools that you are supposed to be using, you're not even using at all. In other words, you're saying to me as the master, you're not doing any work whatsoever. You're making no movement whatsoever. And the reply may come back, yes, that's right. I'm not doing any. Question. Have you committed to this craft or not? Because it sounds like you have not yet made the commitment to make a masterpiece of your life. And that's the question I'll ask you. Are you committed? Do you wish to engage in making your life a masterpiece? I don't know. Well, then, now we'll go down a path, whether it's with that master or another, to determine, because if the young apprentice does not take the first step to saying, I want to be that, and I must commit to do it, it's not going to happen. And so the strategies for how to bring that awareness to that young apprentice, whoever they may be, to first and foremost, without commitment, there is no work. There is no masterpiece. I leave it back to you, the thousands of you who are so skilled and have come from the places in life where you've felt these things and you have strategies to help people get unstuck and say, yes, I will commit, because I will not attempt to be in your shoes. I've never had that experience. But without commitment, there is no work.
Yes. I love that.
Thank you.
And I think it's wonderful how you're saying in that that you're really equipping the participant to discover so much about who they are. And a couple notes that I've noticed as you were talking is I love that it's a universal influence. So any age, because there's a lot of assumption that they have to be kids, which is a lot of what we look at, but there's a lot of people that are well into adulthood that's struggling or maybe haven't been through that process yet. And that this is for any of us, any of them. And then also, I love that there's not the word counseling or therapy in this, because the stigma that comes with that name as a therapist, I don't always say that word when I'm around people like you were talking about working with. But you're using a way to really help them heal and cope and acknowledge where they have power. And I just love that. And so that was a note I had on it.
Great.
Let me jump in for a second, because Alyssa has a question, but she can't unmute. She has a lot of people around her, and it's kind of busy where she is. So she, in the chat, asked me to ask, what is the main idea that you want us all to take away from today? And I thought that that was a great question from Melissa, because I know from speaking to you before and looking at your website, and I want to just verify that I didn't take it down incorrectly. It's, I'm looking in the chat here. I put it in here, but remind us of your website, Charles. I can't find it.
The article website is called Life Masterpiece Journal.
Okay.
.com. And then the workshop, the place where you actually go in and do work, is under construction right now. So
Life Masterpiece
coming soon.
Journal.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's a lot there. So how would you, what would you like for all of us to take away from this little tidbit that you've shared here today?
Number one, if you have ever looked at the bigger picture of life and all of the activities that go on and have at times been completely out of sync, saying everything seems, so much of this seems random. In other words, if it doesn't come across my desk, I don't know what to look at, which is called the trial and error part of life. This is an alternative framework through which to view that experience. That's the biggest takeaway. And it is based on something you already know. If you have ever had to study and learn something, and then eventually practice and improve upon it, and get to a level of skillful execution in that endeavor, whatever it may be, that actually gives you a sense of significant self-esteem at your skill building that you've done over, oftentimes it takes thousands of hours to get to that place. What you have practiced in that one endeavor is called the way of craftsmanship. It is the progressive, incremental building of skills executed with excellence. Now, if you've ever done it to a high degree, and others have been, wow, impressed by it and seen it and thought that is something, you did that extremely well, that is presenting your craftsmanship to the world. Now, what if you could do that in every other endeavor that you took in your life? You don't have to become a master at all of them, but you approach them in a skillful workman-like manner or workwoman-like manner. When you do this, you are following the way of craftsmanship. So that's the second thing. The framework is to give you a place to go in and see something and come back and work on it and know you're going to go back tomorrow, and that same organizational structure is there for you to be able to pull out other topics. But the second thing is, when you bring a topic onto your workbench, one thing at a time, commit and work on it and improve it with skill. Every single one of you has achieved a degree of skill in something in your life, such as your profession, your vocation, whatever it may be. And it took you thousands of hours to get there, and you're still getting better at it. And others are seeing you and going, wow, you do that really well. Yeah, 10,000 hours worth of well.
You know, all of that you just said reminds me of you, Pastor Steve. Stephen Dudley has really mastered his form of just sharing the gospel with others. And he's written a book. And tell everybody the title of your book so I don't say it and get it wrong.
It's the gospel within. It's the gospel within.
The gospel within.
And see, it's already here. It's already here.
Yes.
We just pull it out.
Yeah. So it's, as you were talking, Charles, I was thinking, wow, Steve, that's what you did.
Exactly.
Just for years and years and years, mastered the craft of getting people in touch with something that they've already heard somewhere, and then making it their own, getting people to, really understand that. So I know we're coming up to, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me confess this, that God gave that to me in one day. I can't take credit for that. God gave that to me in one day.
Well, you practiced.
We started living with those, Lord, every day.
You've practiced it for years, and I'm sure that you've just gotten
Oh, after that, yes,
more
yes.
and more skilled, and the masterpiece is your book and your life, and so that's awesome.
That was the question I was going to ask. I see all these things fitting together. I said, but where's the glue to keep them together? And that's where I see God at. God is the glue that keeps them together. How do we turn people on to God, that God is going to make everything we desire to do stick?
Oh, that's good. Well, that's a new one, Stephen. I've studied the names of God and what they mean. I've never, ever heard anybody say God is glue. So I love it.
He holds everything together.
I love
super
it.
glue. Yeah, super glue.
All right, super glue. So Amber,
that's in Colossians 1:16.
Super glue.
Okay, love it.
By him all things consist.
I love it. I love it. So Amber, you want to wrap us up here? We're getting to the end of our time.
Yes, we do have just a few minutes left. So Charles, I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of us for sharing about it. And I know it's just a glimpse of the awesome things that's within the whole curriculum and the whole set of everything. And so we do hope that everybody visits your website or contact with you to get some more information. It seems like a great asset for anywhere of guidance and information on that. So
great, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming and answering some great questions. Just a reminder to everybody to make sure you're on loveisaction.com and subscribe to our organization and share what you all are doing in your communities and the greatness of the impact of that, making sure that we remember what Love is Action is really about. And we are all here today to be encouraged, educated, and empowered, and knowing that each of us can walk back today to our communities making an impact. So we do this every month, the second Friday of the month. And so next Friday, we're hoping to share hope, no pun intended, about my book of hope that I think we all can share. And I know every time I attend this, Stephen, especially you, is one I hear a lot. You share hope. So I'm excited to see you then. Let us know if you have questions. And Miss Rhonda, anything else?
Well, yes, because you didn't go into any detail about what you're going to talk about with the hope. So I have to say that Amber's book gives 12 keys to healing hardship and hurt and sorrow. And I had the great pleasure of reading it ahead of time because I had the honor of writing the foreword. And I want to tell you, Amber knows what she's talking about when it comes to healing from hardship and hope, because her case of the documented case of child abuse that she experienced was really severe. But as you can see from Miss Amber, there's not a scintilla of self-pity in her. And Jamerica, I see you smiling about that. Those of us who come from hard places, we know that it didn't happen overnight. And there was a lot of hardship and pain. But to become a social worker, a therapist, to become a foster mom, an adoptive mom, and to now be the chairperson of Successful Survivors Foundation, a nationwide organization that exists solely to help survivors to create successful lives. I think that speaks for the fact that Amber knows from personal experience that these 12 keys that she's written about work. They really work. So I love, Amber, that you're going to share some of those 12 keys next month. So I hope that you'll all be back for that. I hope that you'll tell everybody you know, because it really is very powerful. I mean, even at I'm old enough to be Amber's mom. I hope not Amber's grandma, but whatever. But I learned a lot from that. So from those 12 keys. So, and everybody experiences pain, excuse me, at some point in their life. So we might as well, if we're going to live our life as a masterpiece, right, Charles? We want to learn from the masters, people who have mastered whatever they've mastered in their life. So come back and join us. And thank you for being here today.
Yes, thank you all. That was beautiful. And let's just see if it meets that expectation with the grace and expectation that it will. And Charles, today we're thankful for what you've shared and how much it can relate to what we all hold as our passion and continue to explore it.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rhonda.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Have a great day.